We're living through some very difficult and uncertain times. Instead of spending money and living life comfortably, the American dream feels more like a receipt for far too many people. Long, confusing, and full of unexpected costs. The American economy isn't booming for everybody. It's breaking the backs of working people in this country, period. While billionaires fly private and corporate profits hit record highs, everyday Americans are getting crushed by the cost of living, expensive rent, and now tariffs. Tariffs that were sold as a way to protect American jobs. But in reality, they're making it more expensive to buy the basics, stuff like groceries, clothes, shoes, cars, you name it, it's more expensive. Working class folks in America right now, Black, white, Latino, everyone is paying more and is getting less, while the same politicians who are praising these tariffs cash checks from the industries they claim to be punishing. In every state across our country, wages are flat, savings are gone, and small businesses are barely staying afloat as we hold our breath hoping to avoid a recession. Folks, this isn't some abstract debate about global trade. It's about the mother who can't afford new shoes for her kids because tariffs just made them $15 more expensive. It's about the factory worker whose hours have been cut because imported parts are either stuck at the dock or priced out. It's about the server working the late night shift, but the restaurant is empty and tips are dried up because no one has the extra money to go out for dinner. So today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do what too many politicians are afraid to do. We're headed to the Situation Room to talk to some of our neighbors, just ordinary people, about the real impact of tariffs and this rigged economic system on their lives. Because what's happening right now in America, this isn't economic patriotism, it's economic punishment. I'm Hendrell Remus, and this is Politics Unfiltered. All right, thank you guys for taking some time out of your busy schedules to have a conversation about the economy and how the economy is really impacting regular people. I know we hear all these news stories and all these economists talk about stock market this or stock market that, or how well the jobs report was or wasn't, and if inflation is hurting people or helping people. But at the end of the day, there are actually real people who are living through the economic situation in America. Some people have it great. Others don't have it so well. But I want to share with our listeners just real life stories about people who are actually living in the economy and how it's impacting you. So let's start by just introducing yourself and your source of income. We'll start right here.
I am Michael Seymour, and my income comes from my Social Security. I'm 65 now, and I'm in the struggle.
In the struggle.
I'm Alex Hensley. I'm a consultant, so I own my own business.
Right.
My name is Joseph Page. I'm unemployed, and I have no income.
All right.
Amber, I am employed. I'm a policy organizer.
All right, good. So let's start with, I guess, Mike and Joseph, because Mike, you're on Social Security, you mentioned, and Joseph, you're unemployed. Any one of you receiving public benefits outside of Social Security or unemployment, anything right now?
Yeah, I got a little benefit off of United Health. They give me a food voucher.
Is it something like TennCare or Medicare, Medicaid, or
it's
something
like that?
Okay.
Something like this insurance. They give me like $2.90, for the food, but it still ain't enough because once you go to the grocery store, everything almost started $5 and up,
Yeah.
And once you start buying these things and you start spending that money in your money, then you have hardly no money to even last a whole month.
So you're getting like $290 for the month?
No, that's for the food voucher.
Just for the food voucher for the month, but that's one, you get that once a month.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Joseph?
Not currently, but I have received unemployment benefits in the past.
Okay, so you really don't have any income?
No, none at all.
How is that? Like, in this economy, how are you surviving with no income right now?
I mean, fortunately, I have family that can backstop my poverty. And, I'm not concerned about housing or food. But, without that, I really don't have any way of providing for myself at the moment.
Look, we hear these stories about like the American economy is booming and there's jobs for everybody. And all the thing you got to do is go out and find a job. Like, are you out actively like seeking employment, and how has that been?
Exhausting. I would say, I'm 30. I turned 30 this month. The job market is not the same as it was before before I was born. And I would say it probably isn't even the same as it was when I first became an adult and started looking for jobs. You can't go out into the community looking for jobs every day, or a lot of people say networking is very important, but I think that's become so emphasized that everybody is doing it.
Yeah, and then I guess your question is too. They say there's all these jobs, but I guess it also depends on where you are in the country, like what city you live in, what state you live in,
and what do you do?
Yeah, and what do you do? Because some cities might lack the jobs that's actually out there. Jobs might be more concentrated in other places. Mike, let me ask you a question. Healthcare wise, you receive healthcare from the state of Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay. And does that cover all of like the cost of your doctor's visits, all that? And that's because you're receiving Social Security, correct? Okay. All right. I just wanted to pick your brain on that a little bit. Let's switch gears. Employed, business owner. I too started a small business in this economy, so I'm hoping to actually hear some great things from the business owner. Alex, how has it been being a business owner in the current economy? And let me preface this by asking or by saying, everybody talks about how Donald Trump, the businessman, is going to create the best economy for folks who own businesses or folks who start businesses that you'll thrive. So how has that been for you?
It's gotten worse over the last few months. I think, especially working in politics and social impact and working with nonprofit organizations. Nonprofits are scared right now and losing federal funding. And so they're not seeking the same kind of support from consultants like me. So they're not going to seek that support. And therefore, I have to worry about if I'll be able to pay my bills. So it's been more of a struggle recently, I would say, to get clients, especially in social impact.
So are your clients all just kind of focused in one location, or are you having to expand your horizon on where you're trying to reach clients at now?
I'm trying to expand, yeah, because I think especially in Memphis, the dollars are short, and there's only several organizations doing the work, but it feels like there's an environment where they're kind of having to fight each other for funding. So, yeah.
Unfortunate. Amber, you work every day? You work full-time, you work part-time?
I work full-time.
You work full-time. You got benefits?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to talk about how that has impacted you in this economy? Like, have you been able to survive on the salary? Because there's one thing to be working.
Yeah.
And then it's another thing to be making enough money to actually survive. So are you making enough money? Are you feeling the wage increase that's happening in the country? Are you able to live in the midst of high inflation? Can you afford eggs? Can you afford eggs and gas and all that good stuff?
It's all very expensive. So I'll backtrack. I actually was a contract worker up until 2 years ago. And I left contract work specifically because of the cost of living. So I think that when we talk about like the current presidency and like how it's impacting people, but I would say the cost of living has been getting higher and higher for a while, which is a key reason why I left doing contract work.
So you're saying this isn't necessarily a new Trump thing. This is this is a feeling that economically you guys have been feeling for
I think that we've been feeling it like since the pandemic.
I
think after the pandemic like kind of slowed down, you started seeing like steady rise of inflation going towards like a recession type of vibe. And it just gotten a lot worse in the last like year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was a key reason why I left contract work because, you know, for 1099 workers, you have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And like the amount of taxes I was having to pay did not outweigh like the cost of living that I had. And so I was losing money paying taxes and paying for my own health insurance because that's super expensive.
Yep.
Even on the ACA, if you're making like over 60K or over 50K, you're paying like $300 for insurance a month.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you still pay for medications and they're usually higher. So I got a full-time job because of that. And then even with that full-time job, I definitely was feeling the weight of inflation bad. Even with this past year, they gave us, I got a $15,000 raise this year. I barely feel that.
So let me ask something. In the midst of inflation, is there anything that you did prior to inflation? Anything that you would regularly buy? Any place you would regularly go that you have said I can't afford to do it anymore?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
What's that, Mike?
because it's the way I like to eat, and I can't eat like that no more. So, cause the inflation is, the food is so high. The vegetables seem like it's died in a week or two. You can't store too much vegetables, so I'm constantly losing. Even going to the store, spending my money, and I know I get once a month, and then when the money run off, I'm looking like, whoa, where I go from here? You know what I mean? So it's rough out here. Believe me, it's rough.
How about, they always talk about egg prices. Anybody buy eggs?
Not
Big
as
egg
much.
prices. Not as much.
Stop buying eggs.
I only buy them like once or twice a month. So I grocery shop every week because of what Michael's saying. Yeah. So I definitely noticed in the last year, especially that like the vegetables and stuff are going bad way quicker.
Way quicker.
Yeah.
And I really think that also has to do with the
Milk.
presidency and like rolling back certain things.
Yeah.
So our food isn't as safe as it was before and isn't receiving the same treatment. Because I definitely think I can see a huge difference between last year when I was buying stuff that would last me like 2 weeks. And this year, I bought some oranges last week. The oranges lasted 4 days.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm
And
saying.
almost the whole bag was moldy. And I was like,
So what makes you what scares you the most about this economy? Or what makes you feel what makes you feel most hopeful about the economy? Is there anything to make you feel hopeful about the economy right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are pissed off about it.
People are pissed
Yeah.
off about it. So when people are pissed off, what do you think why does that make you hopeful?
I hopefully, I think that people will eventually realize, this doesn't have to be the situation, and will put pressure on elected officials to do something to correct course. And, the thing that makes me nervous about it is, the issue sometimes will outweigh any one person's ability or any one political regime's ability to make a substantive impact on it.
Yeah.
So now it's like in the situation of American politics, we can only make incremental changes.
Yeah.
And it's getting so big that I don't think we will ever be able to come in and make one big corrective action to get us back on track.
Anybody else feeling hopeful about the economy? Hoping that it'll get better? Hopeful that hopefully that wages will go up? Anybody?
I mean, I do kind of agree with part of what Joseph said. I do think that people are paying more attention, and I'm hoping that pressure will also help us not pass the big, beautiful bill and like all the things that are affecting it, because I'm really worried about my nana and my aunts who are on like Medicare and Social Security and like the way that it'll impact them, and student loans, because I have student loans and I know people I had a friend who just got out of college. She trying to figure out how she gonna do her repayment plan. She said it ain't even on there. Like I can't even do the
just talking about student loans. Student loans were paused for that long period of time, and then all of a sudden, student loans, those payments came back due. That 90-day threshold that was left at the end of the administration. And then some people woke up one morning and their credit scores had taken a 150 point hit. And the government's like, oh, well, you owe us now. How, for you, employed full-time, cost of living is expensive. On top of that, you've got student loans. Do you look back and say, I really wish the past administration, the Biden-Harris administration, would have been able to get this student loan thing taken care of?
Oh, yeah. I think they played in our faces. And I really feel like people, weren't hard enough on them. I saw a lot of like grassroots orgs, other orgs I'm associated with, we were all pushing them to do the right thing. And then I feel like these local officials were like, well, it's not really a big problem for us. Like, I think that when you have the Democratic Party itself that's not pressuring the actual people who are in power at the time to do something versus the people who are affected being the only ones, then it does like cause a rift.
Yeah, but does it make a difference that Republican attorney generals actually filed a lawsuit to stop the student loan forgiveness?
I mean, I think if somebody want to do something, they're going to do it.
Right.
And Biden had multiple chances to pick up that pen, as we would constantly say on Twitter, and sign those things. He was making excuses, and then he waited so long to where there is a lawsuit filed. But if he already signed it, the ballot's already gone. Ain't nothing you
Makes
can
it
do.
a lot harder.
Right.
It makes it a lot
How you
harder to
gonna
go
find
back
out
and
how
say we
much
got to
I
go
owe?
back and put it on there.
And that's
He was
what the
stalling.
Republicans are doing.
Yeah.
That's their strategy right now. Like, I have student loans that I've had in forbearance for years and years. And so now I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm going to have to choose between that or healthcare. And that's still, because it's contract workers, I got to pay my own healthcare. Yeah. I've already cut back on mental health care, counseling, medication that I need. And so, so I think, that's still going to be tough. So there was something they should have done about it. And like Joseph, I do feel hopeful on student loans that when those payments hit, we're going to be mad.
Yeah.
Mike, let me ask you a question. On top of Social Security, there's this new thing where the president's talking about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. And he's talking about people who are making money outside of getting their Social Security checks. Are you doing anything else on the side to just try to make ends meet?
Yeah, I DJ every night.
Okay.
And, trying.
You pretty good?
Yeah.
You good?
I'm pretty good. DJ motivated. I'm pretty good, So I DJ for a lot of people, but that's how I make extra money. Because if I don't, I won't be able to survive from month to month, man. They don't give you enough. It's like I call it check a voucher. Something they just give it to you where you can pay your rent and pay your what bills, and after that, you're on your own. And that's how messed up the economy is.
Let me ask something. How about how many people are renting right now? Show of hands. How many people are renting? How many are you renting a place? Are you staying?
No, I moved in with someone.
Okay. How many people are renting? How many people? So nobody actually owns their home. Over the last few years, I know there was this national outcry about the cost of rent constantly rising.
Yes, it is.
Is that part of the reason why you're staying with someone else right now?
I mean, aside from being unemployed,
okay,
I can't afford cheap rent.
Okay, okay. But have you all seen your rent rates climb at a rate that at a pace that hadn't seemed normal? Or has it been pretty steady?
Yeah, it's climbed every year. Thankfully, it's not been like $400 or $500 extra, but it's still high enough that I can't afford to save to own my own home for a down payment. So, there's still a trade-off.
And I will say, because I have rented, I've been a consistent renter my entire adult life, and the trade-off is, I think, of where you live and where you're renting.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the way the economy is, there is this competition of, people with high skill sets to be in the biggest markets in America.
Yeah.
And those markets have rent rates that are absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it's the trade-off of like, do I want to be somewhere that is not, doesn't have an abundance of job opportunities and have a lower rent, or do I want to, be somewhere where there are always going to be jobs around, but I may never be able to afford to buy a house?
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask you all a question, and I'll just get something from all of you all. If the president or folks in Congress or in the Senate was listening to this podcast, and they were trying to figure out what could they do to change the lives economically for people, what would be your advice to them? What would you tell the government? This is what we need the most. Mike?
What we need the most is the people to come together and understand that for one thing, we need each other. And another thing is to take us in considerate of what's going on in this economy right today, because the way the world is going, and wonder why it's violent and corrupt out here. It's so corrupt out here because they're not getting no job. They're not seeing no income to make them feel like a man and make them feel better about themselves. So the best thing I can say is they're gonna have to provide jobs, you know what I mean, and skills for them so they can get themselves together and start a new life for them. That's the only thing I can see the government can do, is reach out and take some of that money and do for the people that's less fortunate.
Alex, what about you? If the government's listening, if the president's listening, what would you say to the president?
I think we need to bring living wages back to the table. I don't think we even talked about that much during Biden's administration. And I'm not talking $15 an hour. We're past that at this point. So we need 25. I think we need something comparable to what the cost of living is right now. And I think we need to cancel student loan debt. Why not? He could be the most popular president in history. Cancel that debt. Go ahead and do it. They're already breaking all the laws and not following court orders. Why not go ahead and do something that'll make your people happy? And I think, too, that we need some rent control. If we're going to do living wages, if this was my dream, we also have to have rent control, because they'll try to raise the prices while they're raising our wages.
And you applaud,
yeah.
because there are companies that in cities that are trying to make affordable housing possible,
Right.
But the market is so competitive with these corporations
Right.
that come in and buy up and max out markets, and it drives affordable housing, the cost of affordable housing up a little bit more. Now, I'm not in the housing side of things, but I do want to applaud the folks who are trying to make housing affordable for people. Amber, if the folks in Washington or in the State House was listening to this, economically, what would you be telling them to do to help make your life and the people you know better?
Well, one, I would tell Dorito that he sucks, and two, I would tell them to not vote for that bill. The Senate needs to do the right thing and fail that bill so that folks Medicare and Medicaid isn't affected. My student loans aren't affected. Like, we aren't setting the poorest or the least of these in our country up for failure because we're going to give these massive tax cuts to billionaires.
Yes.
Like, that's just insane.
Right.
What about you, Joseph?
I think we need a big, beautiful bill.
It's not this
Just not this one.
Not this one.
And it's not that complicated. People, I think, try to make politics or policy, particularly at the federal level, extremely complicated. They have these massive bills that are thousands of pages long. They have all these academics and attorneys that write them. And when I try to explain it to people, you don't have to go read it. You just have to know what people's priorities are.
Yeah.
And they want something that benefits the wealthiest people in this country, not everyday working people. And when I tell folks, I'm like, if you understand the priorities of somebody like Donald Trump and those who work in his administration, it doesn't take you long to figure out you're not anywhere in that bill. You don't have to go read the 1,000 pages in it. And I think we need something like that in America, but that investment that makes housing affordable, that allows people to go get high skills without coming out of college with tens of thousands of dollars in debt, allows people to go get checked up at the hospital without, coming out with a $10,000 medical bill.
Let me ask something. So we know what's kind of impacting you all's life and where you all are economically. What about the people around you, your families? Is this a trickle effect? Like is the people around you, are the people around you dealing with kind of the same thing, or are there people who are doing very or better?
I think it's a mix. I would actually even say that, like, with the big beautiful bill, like the things that he's attempting to do was already started in that first tax bill that he passed when he was first president. And you didn't see the effects of that until the Biden presidency. I've never owed money on taxes before until that tax bill was passed. And then the next year after that, all of a sudden I owe so much money. But my dad, who's making over $100K, he excited because he don't owe nothing. He said, this is his first time getting a refund because he's making so much money. And that's been over the last 2 to 3 years. And now you're trying to pass another bill that's going to affect us even more. So I think it's definitely a mixture. But my mama, who doesn't make that much, did get a refund, and she never really gets them either, but she makes higher than me. So the people who are making the lowest amount of money have started struggling, I would say 3 years ago. And then it's just trickling down and getting higher and higher and higher.
Tax code really not working for poor and working.
It's horrible. And most people don't read the tax code, so they don't even understand what he passed. I only knew because I went to read it because I'm trying to understand why I'm not making a lot of money and y'all talking about thousands. I said thousands. This is insane.
Like the people around you, your friends, your family, Are they doing better or are they doing about the same?
They doing about the same. They struggling. They wonder how they gonna get grocery.
And I could imagine I mean, you DJ on the side to bring in some extra income, but I could imagine the people who have no extra side hustle.
My sister, I think about my sister, and she just barely making it, and it's like it's 1 month to another. You're waiting on the next month come just to wait for another month to come, and it still ain't going no further. It's still in the same place. The economy.
Right.
Thumbs down. He said thumbs down. He said thumbs down on the economy. What about you, Alex? The people around you?
I think they're about the same, but they're really scared. You know, my dad is a veteran and he served in the Air Force for 22 years, and he's worried about losing benefits and really just appointments, being able to access his health care with threats to cuts to the VA. And so his body is tired. He's only 52 years old, but he has all of these health issues. And so I think he cannot work. He should not go and get another job. And I think the concern on the table now is if there are not options to with his disability benefits, you know, that's not going to be enough to cover the rising cost. And my granny is on Social Security, and that's what she lives on. She lives on Medicaid, and Social Security I don't think is on the table yet, but Medicaid certainly is. And so you have to cut. You know, if they're going to cut Medicaid and cut her health care, she has to pay for that out of pocket.
If this economy starts to get better tomorrow, Joseph, you get a job, Mike, Social Security gets a slight increase, Amber, wages start going up, Alex, you start picking up more clients, economy starts to get better, money's starting to drop into your bank account, a little bit more money. What's the first thing that you're doing? What's the first thing you say, you know, here's what I'm doing with this new extra money?
Any money is extra money.
So, look, what I do with the extra money, I'll try to be able to save more. So I can look forward for, you know, certain things I want to do in life.
Okay.
And I can be able to do it once I can be able to have enough money to save, you know. But if you ain't got enough income coming in to save, you living check to check, month to month, it's hard to see something like this. So. That's had to take a minute to adjust. If you do get it increased cost, now you got to increase.
Scared. You're scared. You're like, let me put this in my pocket, drop this in the savings account for a while.
It creates it creates fear for people. I think people don't understand how like poverty also affects like your mental health and like your physical like body. Yeah. And so even just getting extra money, I would save it too, because I don't know when I would get the extra money again.
Yes.
You really never. And that kind of fear is also like traumatizing.
I think you know, trying to, because I've done well. I had a good job. I made six figures. You know, I've done well. I've got 401k. So my perception on the economy is a little bit different than it was growing up. I mean, I grew up poor. We depended on public assistance, but now it's a little bit different. So some of the narratives that you all are painting, I know people who have had to deal with it, but I'm not personally having to deal with it right now. So it's refreshing to really hear that when we hear that the economy is doing good, and no matter how 401ks go up for some folks, there are people who don't have it at all.
Right.
And there's no hardship funds that they can go pull out to say, I need a little bit extra money because I don't have it. Some of you all at this table are really struggling check to check or waiting for the next check. Yeah. And those
even 401ks are not as accessible as people make them seem. My job as a 401k, they didn't even explain it to us at first. So I had to get explanation on what it even was. Two, it's not that much money. Right. I've been in my job for several years. I don't have that much money. I have like maybe a few thousand in the 401k. It's not a lot.
You'd have to be making a really high amount of money to be able to put an extra percent into that 401k to really make it meaningful.
And most people my age, like most millennials, have not had jobs with 401ks, or if they do have one now, it doesn't have a lot in it. Like people in the older generations, they definitely like they're worried right now because the stock market is tanking because they have so much in their 401k. But we don't even have that worry because we don't even have that as a like safety net.
Yeah, and I think about that, like these young folks who've gone to college for 4 years, some 5 years, and they've gotten out of college, and now they're in a market where all these jobs supposedly exist, and they're being told by employers, well, great, you got that 4-year degree, but you also got to have 3 years worth of experience on top of that.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's almost like a double whammy. I've got student loans, I've got a degree, but now I don't have this extra experience that they want me to have even before I can get the job. And I think that's terrible.
And when you think of the job market too, like Memphis is more of a tip agency. Let's work at the Nike factory or FedEx. That's the jobs they're talking about. They're not talking about jobs for people who have 4-year degrees or master's degrees. Those jobs are not here. And that's why a lot of people leave Memphis, because you have to go somewhere where you can get a job, and it's usually not going to be here.
So I guess it's back to what we started this conversation with. Yes, there may be jobs, but where are the jobs? And sometimes that means having to relocate in order to do it. So I think that's important. I think that's important. The president, this big beautiful bill, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on additional Social Security wages up to $25,000. But all those things are just temporary. I think they expire in 3 years. They expire in 2028. If you could make those things permanent, would you be telling the president those things need to be permanent?
That's not even what I think we should be focusing on. The more important thing is the fact that for student loans, it takes out the income-based repayment program.
But if you could make those things permanent, would you make them permanent?
No, it's not. Isn't I mean,
you don't want the bill
Michael
at all.
wouldn't get that.
You don't care what's in the bill. You don't care what's in the bill. You don't want it. You don't want it at all.
That's for people who are making that money on top of. So that's the no tips when you have money on top of that. He's not working something outside of that for real. So he wouldn't even qualify for that. And most people wouldn't. My nana wouldn't qualify. My aunts wouldn't qualify. My uncles wouldn't qualify. None of them would get those benefits. So it's still just for the top people who are getting Social Security, but also still have a part-time gig at Target. Like the older ladies I see there who are still working there. Like those people. It's not like your everyday average American person.
Right. And I think, Amber, you brought this up, and it's my understanding that we're able to make these cuts because they're giving tax cuts to billionaires, So I think the way that the bill is set up, the structure, like, of course we want tax cuts, but not at the expense of services, and not where corporations and billionaires can just get out of paying their fair share.
Which I think takes it back to what Joseph said, is that we want a bill, but we don't want this bill. Right. It needs to be a bill that focuses on the everyday working class person, and those are people who are feeling the effects of inflation the most right now.
Right.
We talk about the economy right now as we're recording this podcast. Donald Trump has been president for about 5 months now.
That's it.
That's it. That's
you
it.
See how much he did?
We got so much time left.
It's been 5 months.
It's going down, baby. O Street in the rain over here.
But let me ask something, because Amber, you mentioned earlier that the economy for you, or this economic situation for you, has kind of been lingering since COVID, which was the last time we saw Donald Trump in the White House. Joseph, you said you've been out of work for a while. It has been longer than 5 months.
Yeah, it's actually month number 6.
Okay,
this month.
So it started under the last administration. Do we think I believe that the Biden-Harris administration left Donald Trump a good economy, but I don't think that economy was a great economy for working folks. We know that's when inflation went through the roof. Do we think? Do you all believe that there's that when it comes to the economic condition in this country, that is more than just one party? That it is Democrats and Republicans that bear the blame, or are we seeing it exasperated, and we're seeing it exasperated by Republicans, or do we look at the Republican Party on its own and say, you're the problem? We don't have this because of you. What do you all think about that?
I think it's a mix of both.
It's a mix of both.
Yeah,
It's a mix of both.
It's a mix of both. Because one, the Democrats, all they doing is holding press conferences. They not doing shit. Like, there needs to be some level of lobbying, working with the other. Like, if you keep saying we need 4 Republicans, we need 3 Republicans. Why aren't you getting that?
Even before this administration, you believe that both.
I still think it's a mix of both. Seeing what the way the federal government works, especially, they do a lot of performative stuff. That doesn't, like, me seeing you outside with a little sign you got made at Kinko's for this press conference does nothing for me and how I'm actually handling, like, the everyday conditions of our lives. We're still struggling.
Yes.
So I really think that they need to focus more on actually passing legislation. Your most famous Congress people, Dems and Republicans, ain't passing nothing.
Right.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I think Republicans are more responsible. I think Democrats have not been great about messaging about the good things that they have done. And I think Democrats have been far too concerned about bipartisanship. We are so far beyond that at this point. Republicans do not give a shit about that at all. And so I think Democrats need to be, go full force on their agenda with no apology.
So let me ask another question. Would you vote for a Republican who had an economic agenda that you looked at and said, this is a person who has actual policies that are going to make my life better?
I would be skeptical.
You'd be skeptical.
Immediately. It would have to be a Republican that has flipped in the last year, has been working on legislation, has already been proposing it, and then in the election came up, they said, I'm actually running again, and this is what I've done. Like, I have to see some proof, because people will flip all the time just for the okie doke to get some votes. But if you actually have been saying, I've already been working with the Democrats, I've already had this legislation, we almost passed this, I just need some votes to stay in so I can keep doing this work, that's different.
Yeah.
If Bernie Sanders told me he was building a coalition with like economic Republicans who wanted to do something, maybe.
Yeah.
Mike, let me ask you. You mentioned in the beginning you're speaking for the elders. Is there a time period over the last 65 years of your life that you look back and say, this is when the economy was good for me. This is when the economy was good for my sister and my family.
Oh, yes. I can say back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s?
In the 80s was good, y'all.
So the Reagan 80s.
Yeah, the Reagan
Under the Reagan years.
Not Reaganomics.
No, it wasn't no Reaganomics, because it gave us a lot of opportunity to get money. It was easy to get money back then than it is now. Everything's so strict. There's so many new laws. You can't do this, you can't do that. But back then in Reaganomics, it probably would have thought it was a Reaganomics, but he allowed us to make money.
So you actually feel like you did well under Republican presidency?
Yes.
Let me ask you another question. What about the 90s? What about under the Clinton years?
The 90s got kind of started going down here. The 90s and going into the 2000s. You know what I mean?
A little bit more structured.
Yeah, it got restructured during the 2000s. We call it millennium now. It's then got worse. It got worse.
And can we talk about, sort of why, are you from Memphis?
Yeah.
And, I think when we talk about the type of jobs that we have in cities and, historically,
So just for the folks who are listening, I want to make sure that they know we're recording this podcast at our studio in Memphis, at our studio in Tennessee, and these guests are from Memphis. Alex, are you from Memphis?
I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana.
You're from Shreveport, Louisiana, but these folks are from the South, and you're from Tennessee too. You're in Memphis now, but you're
essentially I grew up here.
Okay.
I'm also from Louisiana native. But I grew up here.
So a lot of this perspective, is going to be based on the experience that you felt here in Memphis, which is a majority Black city. I think per capita, it may be the largest Black city in America right now. So I just want if you're listening out there, I just wanted to set the scene for where we are and where my neighbors are from.
Yeah, but the reason why I wanted to stop on that point is Memphis is a very heavy industrial manufacturing city. And, back in the 80s was the prime of American manufacturing.
Correct.
And, Memphis also has one of the biggest inland logistics presence in America. We sit right here on the Mississippi River. We have a major airport here. So, as the economy shifted and a lot of people start offshoring these jobs and we start moving toward a more service-based economy,
you start draining the city.
Yeah, Memphis never made that shift.
Yeah. But it seems like Memphis is trying to shift now towards a more technologically driven approach. Now,
at the detriment of the people who live here and our air and our water resources.
That's a fair fact. Yeah.
I think that also, like, when we look at
that's a good point. So XAI and Elon Musk is moving to Memphis, and then Google is moving right across the bridge to
Google, the old Fred's headquarters.
They're Memphis is seemingly becoming this hub for AI and these big computer servers. Which to most people, you hear that and you say, well, there's going to be jobs, but Amber, you're saying there's a cost to that. There's a trade-off.
There's a huge trade-off, and there aren't jobs. I think that also we got to stop falling for the lie of how great this is going to be for the economy. There are a lot of people at the XAI side right now because they're building, they're constructing. There's construction workers who are temporary. These are not permanent jobs.
Yeah, but don't you got to have security and you got to have facility maintenance folks, and
No, they're using secure buildings. They ain't got to do all that. At the most, it's probably maybe 20 jobs. And it is a trade-off. It's a detriment to our air, our water, our aquifer. That is the most precious thing that we have here. That's why there's so many brewing companies.
But do you think that when those industries come in, it will be a trickle effect, or it will be a domino effect where industries that may benefit from those industries may follow?
No.
Or is that just wishful thinking?
Because this is an industry that already doesn't have a lot of jobs.
Right.
I think that we have to also be realistic. The other data centers and other places do not have a lot of jobs because it's run on its own.
Right.
There aren't going to be a lot of jobs there, period. So even just like pushing that, and also allowing XAI to stay here is sending a message that you can bring your data center here too, like the other one that's coming to Fres or Google across the street, and poison our air.
So if you could create the dream economy in Memphis, Tennessee, what type of jobs would you focus on?
It needs to be a mix. I
When
think
you said mix, what do you mean?
Well, first, let me start with our public sector workers. The people who service our city every day, that work for Shelby County government, City of Memphis, the school board, are severely underpaid. And there may be 10,000 workers across the county. And then when there's a mix, we had a conversation earlier about how the economy has changed, and Memphis has stuck with this sort of industrial heavy manufacturing presence. I'm not saying we need to get rid of all those jobs, but what happens is because I'm actually going to agree with Amber that those are not good tech paying jobs when they bring these data centers. They're just acquiring cheap land to store hardware. They need to, figure out a way to invest in our education in Memphis, to upskill our workers that will bring real, tech paying jobs in computer science and engineering and IT and accounting and finance.
Or science, researchers.
Come on now.
Do you think?
Yes.
Y'all got Mike. Y'all got Mike smiling over there. Do you think this is just to borrow what you just said? Is that just an initiative that should be happening in Memphis, or is that a carbon copy that could be happening in places all across the country? Because there are other places in the country you talk about the Appalachia, you talk about down in the Mississippi Delta where people are really poor. Mm-hmm. And is there a blueprint? Is that a blueprint that could kind of be carbon copied in some of those areas as well?
It is happening in some places. There are booming economies, particularly in the Southeast, Nashville, Austin, Charlotte. But the trade-off in those cities is that because it's not, those microeconomic conditions are not in abundance everywhere, the top talent across the country are flooding into those cities. Mm-hmm. And they are not providing housing fast enough. Mm-hmm. So, yes, you get into those cities that have the economic conditions where they have both a manufacturing and industrial presence and a booming service economy, but you got to pay $2,000 for rent.
Yeah. Right.
Let's pivot for a moment. Mike, you're on TennCare. You don't have to worry about paying for health care. You don't have to worry about paying for prescription drugs. Could you imagine what life would be like if you had to pay for your prescriptions on top of that?
What life would be like? Oh my God!
Do you know people who happen to pay for their prescriptions?
Yes,
you do,
and they struggling.
They're struggling.
They're struggling.
Are they having to choose between like food?
Yes, they have to choose between food and prescription because they can't get all their prescriptions. They have to get some food to feed themselves. Wow. I know some people like that right now, man. They struggling. They can't get their medicine fulfilled. When they go to the pharmacy.
Yeah. Let me say something to the folks who got health care. Are you still getting bills on top of having health insurance?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the medications, I would say being on the ACA, the meds were way more expensive. So now the medicine I take are a lot cheaper, but I still have to pay something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I still have to pay like your copay thing at the doctors. Yep. It's different for specialty doctors. I would say my insurance does cover pretty much everything, like at a really low cost, but I'm still paying something. So if I did not have $40 or $50 for a specialty appointment, then I just can't go.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I've got medical debt. that I have to pay off.
I definitely have to look at that.
Yeah.
And you, what? How
I
are you?
have no insurance.
So
Fingers crossed nothing happened to me.
Yeah, fingers crossed that nothing happens to you. But just if,
My knee hurt right now.
I couldn't imagine if you did. I mean, if you had to go just get a regular checkup right now, the cost that you'd be taking on just to do that. And I think that's the craziest part about
If it wasn't severe, I would just eat the pain.
Yeah, I think that he said he just eat the pain. I think that's the hardest part about all this, to see that people are struggling economically, and then at the same time you like, I can't get sick because if I get sick, I'm gonna get crushed economically. Struggling economically and having to choose between gas and food, rent and gas. How do I go to work if I can't afford gas in the car? How do I get up feeling great and having the morale if my utilities are disconnected? How do I survive if I'm facing eviction because I can't afford the rent? I mean, people are dealing with that like on a daily basis.
Yeah, you called me on a good day. I had gas in my car.
That's so let's talk about gas. Let's talk about gas.
that's
Anybody driving less? Anybody driving less?
Way less.
Absolutely.
Way less.
You driving way less?
My car dirty right now because we've been sitting on the street for like 4 days because I don't want to go nowhere.
And let me say, this is even when I was working and making good money. Gas is just
ridiculous.
Was I?
yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily under this administration.
No,
either,
it wasn't.
No.
So
I
we've
used
seen this for a while.
It used to cost me $17 to fill up my car 2 years ago. Now that's like 25, sometimes close to 30. And it's just been steadily going up. That's how I knew that the inflation was getting bad. Because I said the gas ain't never gotten this high.
He said I never paid this much for gas.
Ever. I'm saying like 17 to fill up my whole car. Not like on half. I'm like on empty, it will cost me $17.
All right, let's go back to grocery for a second. The thing that you buy, that you bought the most, or that you buy at the grocery store most, that you immediately recognized, okay, inflation is hitting because this, I always get this, and now this is through the roof. Share. You want to share with the eggs? It was the eggs. It was the eggs for you.
You can get a dozen eggs at Aldi for 69 cents.
But now,
They're like $4.
Yeah.
69 cents to $4.
And I eat a lot of eggs for protein. So like I was eating like 3 a day. So imagine like I'm going through like a dozen and a half.
So you immediately noticed like the egg
Immediately.
price. What about you, Joe?
I was actually going to say the same thing because I was eating a lot of omelets, like to try to lose weight. And the price of eggs, and it's just cheap. It's just something I can make an omelet. This is, has good carbs, has good protein in it. And it's just like the price of it is one of those things that you go and you still purchase it because it's like one of those.
You're like, damn.
It's like, really?
I'm on that ticket. That ticket went like
Chicken through the roof.
I was like $7.99
Yep.
for the wings. I went back, it was like $17.99. I was like, oh, I get.
It also forces you to pay attention to the cost of everything because it used to be I would just go to the grocery store and just
Buy
stuff and not check out.
Yeah.
And then when you got to the counter one day and they say, let me look at my bank account real quick. And
That's why I do pickup now, so you can see it online.
Yeah.
You can see exactly how much
you don't
you're
have to have
spending.
the awkward conversation
Right.
with the cashier.
What's the one thing that you noticed immediately?
I would say chicken thighs.
Chicken thighs.
But another thing too is that I drink smoothies every morning, and I've noticed that frozen strawberries and bananas are fewer and far between. Which I'm wondering, is this tariffs? And it's happened directly after the tariffs. So
And
I think that's part of it.
I think that's something now that I think everybody's kind of on the edge about, because you hear stores that people are using regularly. I don't want to name them, but you see the big retail stores that are now saying that, we're going to have to increase prices because of tariffs. And some of them are saying we got to increase them by 10%, and they're already at 8% increase on prices. So when we talk about tariffs,
the Sheen carts doubling in price. I see.
And then on top of that, there's nobody working in the stores. You've got to check.
Right.
You got to pay a higher price for grocery and check yourself out. You're like, I'm paying a higher price. I thought this money was going to hire somebody in here.
What else also concerns me, the Trump administration gutting the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau. And one thing I've always been curious about since I was a kid, I remember as a kid when gas prices first got really, really high under the Bush administration. And that was the first time that I remember, my parents just wouldn't take me places around Memphis because gas was so expensive. And then as, I got older, all of these, at the time I remember them saying it was just because of the recession. It was just because of the war.
Yeah.
And then it's like, as these singular events that they described were impacting the price of everything, they fade away, but it's like the prices are still the same.
Right.
And the housing situation that happened during the pandemic, it was like, and people were like, oh, well, these housing prices are going to come down after the pandemic.
And that also makes me think about the idea, the corporate greed that they have used, that they have used these moments and these to really price gouge folks.
Yeah, that price gouge. What about the food though? They do the same. The more you buy a certain product,
seems like the price keep going up, going up.
Because
keep going up.
The demand's not keeping up.
These corporations, they have research arms of their business, so they see that if we used to pay $1 for some eggs and now we pay $4, so like the demand is like we still have to buy eggs.
Keep buying them, so
they're like, okay, but my concern is like, how long can they put this much pressure on the economy?
And it's not sustainable.
And that's what I've been wondering. I've asked myself that all the time. I say, is this the real cost? Is this a real reflection of what this should cost, or is this a greedy corporation that has determined? You know what?
We know
they're gonna pay $10 for a carton of eggs. I'm gonna keep them at that rate.
We know the answer because we hear we've heard it over the past at least half decade. The corporations, despite what's going on in the world, are making record profits.
Yes,
right. Made more in the pandemic, and then I've heard conversations about them replacing the price stickers and putting screens on so they can shift the price throughout the day. So if there's more people there at night, then they shift the prices a little bit. So these are things that stores are starting to implement. That's a big fear of mine.
If you could go back pre-COVID and you could tell yourself, after in a few months there's going to be a pandemic. Pandemic's going to happen. Inflation's going to go up. There's going to be a new president, and prices are going to be through the roof. Here's what you need to do in order to prepare for what's coming. What would you have done prior to these conditions to set yourself up for a moment like this? Because who knows? It could happen again.
Yeah.
So how are we preparing ourselves to be able to deal with? Because obviously the recession's, it feels like a recession's on the way if we're not in one already.
Yeah.
What would you do to prepare for a moment like that?
This is what I say. I tried canned goods, store some canned goods, store some, some food that you can keep in the can. Because you never know if we do a blackout, lights go out, the refrigerator go down, what would we do? And then the stores get so where they don't supply the store no more. Are you got enough water? Are you got enough food to eat? And I think we need to store up on that because we never know when.
Yeah, so you're saying these prices get so high, if it's possible to try to store to keep from dealing with the high costs. That's a good point. I think I've probably been telling myself you probably need to save more. You probably need to have a better, a bigger goose egg sitting out there to be able to deal with some of the inflation.
That's good too. That's good
coming.
too. But you got to supply yourself these days because you never know. Because I seen the shelf go low. You couldn't buy nothing in certain stores. So we have to do a lot of get that canned goods, get all that prep, and get them items in there where you can survive just in case the lights go off, just in case you just can't get nowhere, no store to get nothing.
Let me ask you a question.
Won't even be no good.
How many
during that season?
How many do you all shop at the same stores pretty regularly?
Yeah,
pretty regularly. So you don't really have a real comparison of switching stores because the price has gone up so high at one store, so you switch.
I've gone to multiples.
You've gone to
multiples. I stopped shopping at Target anyways, but I've gone from like Kroger to going to Aldi because Aldi does usually have cheaper stuff.
Yeah.
And I always go to Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is like my
Trader Joe's is pretty cheap.
Yeah. Trader Joe's is the one store that I stick with no matter what because their prices haven't gone up. Like that's the only store.
Or you said save a lot.
I've never shopped there. But Trader Joe's prices have never gone up. I would say the egg stuff stayed the same there.
You should try Trader Joe's. You should try Trader
But also,
Trader Joe's.
the
If you
most
listen,
affordable
we'll
options are
take
not
a
closed.
we'll take a sponsorship. We'll take a sponsorship.
We will. We can do a little video and everything.
Aldi, I go there. I like Aldi. It's cheaper than Kroger.
But also, the cheapest stores are not near where the most people
Right.
live. Like,
Exactly.
when I was trying to convince your wife to go there, she was like, I don't know, it's a 30-minute drive. I said, it's worth a 30-minute drive.
Yeah, but I
Trader
can't.
Joe's
It's a
cheap.
trip.
I can't keep her away from there now.
Because it's cheap.
I've never been to
gotta
Trader
try that
Joe's.
with-
You got to try it.
It's
Yeah, you
worth
gotta try
it.
I always thought Trader Joe's was a like kind of a bougie gourmet store, like Whole Foods or Publix.
It's
And that's why I've never been there. I was like, why would I?
no, it's healthy and it's a super affordable.
Okay,
You got to try.
Maybe I'll look
Very
into it.
healthy. The food is like, I mean, the stuff I get from there never goes bad quick. It's the stuff I got from Kroger that went bad quick.
Yes.
All right, we don't want to bash.
Yeah.
We don't. Let's not bash him. Let's not bash him. Let's not bash.
We're never getting a Kroger deal.
Kroger stuff don't.
Let me. Anybody paying a car note right now?
Yep.
You're paying a car note. How long have you had your car note?
About almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. Did you-
5 years.
I'm looking at now with all this inflation and the tariffs and all that. You know, the cost of a vehicle. I mean, you look at the price of a car, and I'm buying a new car. And I was hesitant. I mean, I was out car shopping. And I'm like, geez, I can be buying a house for this
Yep.
amount of money. I mean, it's like the cost of buying a car has
Yep.
gone through the roof. We talk about eggs. You
Yep.
know, if your car break down, you're in trouble. I mean,
Right.
it seems like buying a car is almost like buying a house.
Actually, a car situation is what took me out.
Wow.
I because I had a situation where I had a job that ended, but I actually did have a nest egg. And I lived for quite a few months doing perfectly fine, and then I got hit with engine failure in my car, and that was can I float myself for another 2 or 3 months
Right.
to look for a job, but now I don't have transportation. And that was my decision of, I got to pack it up and go somewhere else because I had and we haven't talked about this in the podcast of how transportation affects our economy.
Right.
And where I live, you need a vehicle to get around.
Yeah. I guess let's talk about that because in the South, it's a little bit different from up north.
Yep.
In the South, taking public transportation is like, oh, you're poor. You're poor. It's seen as a poverty
Yep.
thing. If you're on public transportation, then you're poor. But in other cities, you start going up north, taking public transportation is because, it's public
accessible.
transportation. It's
It's
accessible.
Right.
It's how you get around. But
New York
being
like that, too.
yeah, but being down south, it's like if you're taking public transportation, then you're poor.
Yeah.
Then you're poor. And it's
It was
not
one of my favorite
that's,
things.
I mean, that's a mindset thing. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that. And I think the culture that's been created around that idea.
But also thinking about the accessibility, like when I lived up north, I've lived there twice and I went for jobs specifically because I knew I could take public transit and it would not cost me a lot. I could get on the metro, go to where I had to go to work, come back, and it was super cheap.
Especially
Right.
just thinking if you got a job and you didn't have gas to get to work.
Right.
But you
You
could ride
like-
the train,
Yeah.
get on the metro.
That's
a
what I'm saying.
bus.
If you don't have the option, you're like, I just got this job,
Right.
but I can't even get to work until I get I'm trying to just get to work till I get my first check to put some gas in the car.
Right.
I mean, in some places,
I've been there.
It'd be hard stretch to get public
Yeah.
transit that could get you there.
And I just relocated here from Nashville, and I'm big about getting on the bus, especially in urban parts of the city where you have to pay for parking. I would much rather just catch the bus and just walk somewhere. But to the point that you just made about the perception of public transportation in the South, Nashville just passed a pretty massive tax increase to fund transit. And I told people, I said, I'm interested to see how this goes
People
because
actually use it.
the traffic problem in a city that is growing like that obviously needs to be dealt with, and public transit is kind of a no-brainer, efficient way to move people around. But what I've never heard or seen is a plan of how do we get over this stigma in the South of people who use
Public transportation.
these modes of transportation, and I'm interested to see how that takes shape.
I would argue that it's not even that people don't ride it as much because of the stigma. It really is the lack of access.
Yeah.
Because the people who are riding it that are poor are doing it because it's their only option. But I think if there were way more bus availability here,
Yep.
I would ride the bus.
Yep.
I
Same.
don't ride the bus because it would take you 3 hours
Yeah.
to get somewhere that would take me 15 minutes to drive.
I would never imagine riding the bus around Memphis.
Yeah.
It's just because it's inefficient.
practical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look. On the very first episode of this podcast, I mentioned that I talked about poverty a little bit, and I mentioned that it seems like we live in a country that criminalizes
Yep.
or demonizes being poor. Whether it's folks who are riding buses, or whether it's the idea that if you lose your job, you got the drug test, you get shamed.
Yep.
Everybody's saying you got to work harder. If you fall behind on rent, you are definitely getting evicted. There's no system that works for
Right.
you. You're definitely getting evicted. Medical bills. If you fall behind on medical bills, you're definitely going to go in debt. There's no workarounds for that. And the president getting rid of the Consumer Protection Bureau only exasperates those things because you got nobody looking out for you now. You got government really siding with corporations and corporations crushing people in the mix. Do you all feel that same way that being like if you're poor or working class, and I don't want to say more working class, but if you're poor in America, it seems like there's so much weight on you.
Yeah.
There's so much extra. Nobody's saying, hey, here's a poor person. Here's a person that really can't survive in this nation without some assistance. Let's make sure that we give them a step stool or something to jump on the ladder to be able to climb their way up. It feels like that. It feels like nobody's helping the folks who need the help the most.
Because
Yep.
that's how the system is designed. Like it's not like oh my gosh, it actually worked for us. It's purposeful. We
Right.
specifically want to keep people in poverty down because as long as you keep them having to work to make ends meet, they can't go to a city council meeting. They'll never hold an elected official accountable.
Come on.
They'll never push back against anything.
Come on.
MLK talked about how having political power and like addressing people's social economic status is a thing that will push Black people where we need to be. So we stay in poverty on purpose, but they can never get that type of power.
Yeah, but I think about that with Black people, but also white people. I mean, there's a
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about MLK. He's
Oh,
talking
no,
about
there's so many poor Americans in this country.
Yeah,
And-
poor whites out. They are
and
the biggest part of
nobody is saying, you know what? We need to have a reality check.
Right.
Who's looking out for the folks who really can't look out for
Right.
themselves? And let's stop making it harder for them.
Right.
Let's start making it a little bit easier for them.
And why would they? Because they're winning right now. So why would I think about
I
that?
guess
for
that's
you?
a fair point.
And-
That's a fair point.
The other,
And most of them have lobbyists that's got politicians in their
Yeah.
pockets. And that's a big problem. That's an issue.
and the other thing that I've always paid attention to and noticed is that like socially how we glorify certain aspects of the American life. I think a lot of people, particularly in poverty, look at their lives and the people who live around them from an individualistic standpoint. And we are all taught that this concept of you work hard, you get ahead.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who grow up disadvantaged think, if I just grind a little harder,
Yeah.
if I just
It's not really.
That ain't
Right.
necessarily true. I mean, there's some
So
people
that-
out here working their asses off. And
Right.
they're not getting
but
ahead.
this is the mindset
Yeah.
that of a lot of people. Not me and my neighbor need to go pull up on our city council member
Yep.
and figure out why we don't have no good
Right.
jobs.
or just the idea that I know Joseph and Joseph's not working hard. He's not working hard, but I know Joseph needs a job. There's somebody who's living in poverty who is a terribly hard worker who works much harder than Joseph, but because Joseph knows me, then he gets the leg up.
Yep.
He gets the leg up. He gets the opportunity.
Yep.
So with that,
Not a meritocracy we live in.
with that, I know I've kept y'all long enough, and folks who are listening out there, I want you to have these same conversations with the people around you, even when y'all leave here. I know that I know that y'all will, but we should be having this conversation with the folks around us. If you're listening to this podcast, you should be having these conversations with the people around you, because if we don't start highlighting that everything that we hear and everything we see, it's not all rainbows and flowers in the springtime. Some people are really struggling, and they're not struggling by accident. They're struggling by design. And our elected leaders on both sides
ain't doing shit.
aren't doing what Amber said, but aren't doing enough to really focus on pulling people out of the depths. They have this saying about pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but most folks ain't even got straps on their boots.
Right.
Can't afford the strings to pull themselves up. And those are the conversations that we need to start having a lot more. And we need to start thinking about, yes, we hear that the economy is doing good, but just at this table alone, we've seen that there's highs and there's lows, and everybody's not equally balanced in this economy. And that's where we have to get to. How do we create an economy that actually is working for people, not just working for the country as a whole in numbers, but is actually working for people? Thank y'all for joining me for this first little shindig of what we call our own situation room to just talk to ordinary folks. I think that's a big part of, if you're going to have these conversations, you need to actually be talking to people who are being impacted by real life scenarios and issues, and not just what we're hearing from mainstream media and from our politicos. To those of you who are listening to this podcast, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and definitely subscribe. I'm Hendrell Remus, and this is Politics Unfiltered. I'm out.